Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got the Glock 28 Gen 3 chambered in 380 ACP. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. And please consider supporting the channel on Utreon, where we could do some videos that we can no longer do on YouTube. This gun has been around for a very long time. It is a Gen 3, and it's very similar to the very popular Glock 26, the baby Glock. However, in the United States, you couldn't have one. It didn't have enough points to get imported via the point system, and there didn't seem to be enough popularity for Glock to go ahead and build them in the United States like they were a lot of the others. They started manufacturing a lot of their guns in the United States. This one is actually here because a contract from TALO, one of the major distributors, they ordered 10,000 of them with an option for 10,000 more. So it may be here in the United States briefly, depending on how popular it is. Who knows what they may do if it's wildly popular. But you can actually get one now legally in the United States because they're made here in the United States. This gun has been desired by Glock fans for a very long time because it's got very soft recoil. And that's one of the things we found at the range is the recoil was extremely soft on this. Very, very manageable, no snappiness at all. And that was one of the questions that was coming up because it's blowback. And a lot of blowback guns tend to have more pronounced recoil, but this one didn't. The other thing that's unique about it is the barrel tilts, which a blowback and a tilting barrel is not a common setup, but the barrel does tip, and it doesn't use the barrel at all for lockup. In fact, if you look at the front of the locking block on the barrel, it's got a cutout in it instead of being square. If I bring this Glock 26 in just to give you an example, you'll see how it's square here. So as it comes back, it hits that first, and it's part of the locking, and then once the pressure drops, it can unlock. This one, there's nothing there to interfere with it going back other than the weight of the slide and the weight of the spring. So it's a true blowback. However, the tilting barrel should improve the reliability and make it be able to feed from magazines that are very similar to other Glock magazines. In fact, I have the two here that come with it. You'll notice they are a little weird, kind of they're inset, and that's because 380 is a shorter round. So they didn't just take the 9mm magazine and put an internal block in it like some of the companies are doing. Instead, the whole magazine body is different. It holds 10 rounds. There are 12 round available. It's a +2 extension on them. The +2 extension should be relatively easy to get and put on it, which would get you to 12 rounds capacity probably fairly easily. It also would take the 15 and 17 round magazines from the Glock 25, which is the compact size, the Glock 19 size of this in 380. That's not currently available in the United States, which I'm going to believe is going to make those magazines difficult to find in the United States unless somebody decides to start bringing the magazines over. And of course, who knows if or when they'll ever go Gen 5 with this. It's unlikely they're going to do a Gen 4. In fact, the Glock 26 Gen 4 is now flagged on Glock's site as LEO only, law enforcement only, or under the Blue Label program. So they're starting to kind of phase out Gen 3 and phase out Gen 4 in favor of the Gen 5. So if this gets upgraded beyond Gen 3, it probably would go straight to Gen 5, but I haven't got a clue if they're actually going to do it. Part of it's going to depend on popularity. So why would you buy this? Well, if you're a Glock fan, you're going to buy one because you couldn't get one, and then if the contract fills out and they don't renew it, then you won't be able to get them again. So I would imagine Glock fans will get them. Another advantage to it is the form factor and capacity. So the capacity is 10. And what you're finding on a lot of 380s that are coming out these days, they're either the super small ones, so they're really thin, they're really short, and really small, and they hold 5, 6, 7 rounds, or they're larger, and you don't get the compact grip. So you kind of get into a situation where a lot of people with bigger hands either can't be comfortably fit on the small little micros, or they don't want a full size, or even a compact size. They want a subcompact. So this gives you that kind of that full-size grip, that thick grip thickness, the consistent operation of the Glock lineup. So I think there are some advantages to this. Now, a few companies have kind of gone in between. P365 380s come out, but that still has a thinner grip, which has some attraction. Having the same amount of capacity and a smaller footprint has its attraction. but people with larger hands sometimes find that those guns just don't fit well. So I think there's a place for it. Is it the best option out there right now? Probably not. The P365 380 is actually a really good choice for something if you're wanting capacity in a small package, smaller and lighter package. But I do think there's a place for this. It just isn't probably as mainstream as if they'd released it 20 years ago. It might have been far more popular. But let's talk about it because it is here. 6.5 inches front to back. It's actually a little longer than a Gen 4 or Gen 5 Glock 26. The Gen 3s were a hair longer, not significant enough to matter. 1.26 inches wide, which is pretty consistent with the Glock Gen 3s and 4s, and 4.17 inches tall. It does have a shorter grip than a lot of the compacts or subcompacts that are out there. And of course you have that double stack capacity in the polymer mags, which Glock is known for. The sights on it are actually quite nice if you like Glock sights, because that's exactly what they are. They're the standard U-dot Glock sights that you've become accustomed to. They fit the same sizes of any other Glock 26 size sights. They're dovetailed at the rear and the little screw underneath that gets to hold the sight on the front, and they're replaceable with any sight that's out there. There is not an optics ready version of this. If they do a Gen 5 thing, they might make it optics ready, who knows, but there currently isn't an optics ready version of this. And it's a comfortable gun, but it does lack replaceable back straps. That was a Gen 4 feature. Being a Gen 3, it loses that. So it has kind of this pebble texture on the sides, on both sides. Magazine release is not reversible. That became a thing with the Gen 4s. And it has the finger grooves and the serrations at the front and the back. It stays in your hand. And because the recoil is minimal, it really does. It stays in your hand. It doesn't bounce around. It's easy to hold on to. The trigger on this isn't quite as nice as the Gen 4s and 5s. A little bit of take-up. Kind of a very stiff, firm wall, but a nice short break. Decent reset. It's a pretty short reset, and you're right on the wall. And then the break again. Trigger's kind of in the 6-pound territory, but that wall feels very rigid, and then it breaks all at once. One thing I did find with this is I took this to the range, and I took a Gen 5 26 to the range. The Gen 5 26 has a much softer wall. I shot this first and was doing well with it. And when I picked up the Glock 26, the trigger was so much softer on the 26, the Gen 5 26, that it was breaking a little earlier than I wanted to. So I had to kind of focus on it and get used to that softer trigger. So the trigger, if you're used to the Gen 4s and especially the Gen 5s, is going to be stiffer than you like. But it's definitely not a bad trigger. It's just a little stiffer than you might be used to. From a reliability perspective, we had two issues with it. On the very, very first round we fired, it failed to extract and just closed up and the trigger was dead. The spent case was in the chamber. Cycled it out and then it ran perfectly after that. We quite a few rounds through it, getting range footage. And then we did the Barney test. So we put a round in one of the magazines, filled the other magazines, chambered it, put the full magazine in, and it failed to function correctly. It didn't cycle the round correctly. It kind of jammed once. So we cleared that, ran the rest of the magazine through it, did it again, and it worked flawlessly. So there is a little bit of a break-in period, but it was a one-round failure of each of those. And I thought that was kind of strange, because it cleared itself in that same range session. We had a similar problem with the MC9, the Canik MC9, and it cleared itself on the next range session. But the way I look at it, all guns I'll give a break-in period. If you have a problem, you take it home, clean it, oil it, take it back, and it works perfectly the next time, and works after that, of course, continues working, I'm willing to give it that. This would take the trigger guard laser and light things that are out there for all the baby Glocks. So as far as lights and lasers, it doesn't have a Picatinny rail, but that's not going to be a problem. The aftermarket's dealt with it. Holsters may or may not be an issue. It is a little bit longer. So of course it would fit Gen 3 Glock 26 holsters, and it would fit some of the Gen 4s and Gen 5. So it's going to vary on the holsters because some of the dimensions are a little bit different. The trigger reach is a little bit different on this. As long as this part's the same, triggers or holsters that lock on the trigger should work. But it's not guaranteed compatibility with the holsters, but I would say the majority of them should work. That most of them just lock on the trigger and they have enough free space at the end to accommodate, an extra tenth of an inch. If that's the case, then probably the holster is going to work. So of course you probably want to see the internals, especially that difference in that barrel. So just like any Glock, pull the trigger, pull it back just a hair, pull down the 2 tabs, and it comes right apart. So we'll start with the frame. And if I showed you this frame and didn't tell you it was from a Glock 28 and didn't tell you it was from a Gen 3, you probably wouldn't know. There's some nuancey differences, but other than that, it looks like any other Glock frame. Real robust locking block at the front, rails, nice rails at the back, fire control group. It really does look like any other Glock. And probably the same would be true of the slide. If I showed you this from this side and didn't tell you anything about it, so what? It's just another Glock. It has the drop safety plunger, the sear hook is over here, and it does have the dual captive recoil spring. If I pull that out, this is where things almost get different. If I show you this view, it's the same as any other Glock. If I show you that view, it's the same as any other Glock. Really the only difference you would see in the barrel is this hood is a little bit different up here. And of course it's stamped 380 auto, but the hood's different. This is a little bit of residue from the bullets that were going through it. I must not have got that residue off. It's got a nicely machine polished feed ramp, just like most of the Glocks, and polygonal rifling, just like you've become used to on Glocks. So really, other than the caliber and the fact that it's blowback, there's really not much that's different. Now, as far as cross-compatibility, I don't expect to see cross-compatibility with internal parts, but if you can maintain a Glock and you get one of these, you can maintain this, because they come apart together the same way and they go together the same way. Real easy. Glocks are easy to take care of. As far as I know, there's no published MSRP on this. Glock doesn't really publish MSRPs. They enforce MAP, minimum advertised pricing. But I'm seeing these between $5 and $5.50. That's what they seem to be going for right now. That'll probably vary around depending on their popularity, but they're reasonably priced. They're consistently priced with the other, like say Gen 4 Glock 26s when they were common. So I don't see it as being expensive. It's actually less expensive than some of the competitors right now, but it's right in that same consistent price range. Overall, if you're looking for something in this form factor and you want it in 380, you want to cut down on the recoil a lot, this is actually a good choice. If you're looking for the smallest, lightest, this isn't it. And by the way, it comes in at 20.64 ounces. And if you're looking for the thinnest, this isn't it. But if you're looking for the form factor of the baby Glock in 380, or you're a Glock collector, or you just want one before they disappear, it's actually a pretty good choice. Please consider supporting the channel on Utreon, where in the paid subscription tier we're going to be doing videos that we can no longer do on YouTube because they're against their rules, as well as early access to our videos where possible. We'll be fleshing that out, and we're still going to be, of course, publishing the types of videos on YouTube that they still allow. Also check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Getter, Rumble, pretty much everywhere. And thank you.